Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy, and this is my podcast where I sit down with fellow musicians and we talk about their music, their lives, and most importantly, craft beers. I just came back from Asia. I survived the Laws of the Flesh 2019. 8 shows, 7 countries, 11 planes, 1 high-speed train, a whole bunch of van rides. It was insane. It was amazing. All of that traveling was super intense, but the fans and the crowds totally made it worth it. I have to give a huge, huge shout out to a future Vox and Hops alumni. I conducted an interview with this guy. Huge shout out to Sampra Song, Gino, Slam Man Booking, the guy that put this tour all together. So much love, so much respect. Thank you for organizing such a great tour, and any of you metal bands out there that want to tour Asia, hit up Slam Man Bookings and you will not be disappointed. While I was away, I got some great news. I kept hinting that some big things were coming for Vox and Hops. I had aspired to make this happen, and it did. I got confirmation while I was away. Vox and Hops will be at Heavy Montreal this year, and I'm going to be interviewing a whole bunch of bands. I'm super stoked about this. I can't announce who I'm interviewing as of yet, but I will be at both days of Heavy Montreal, and the lineup consists of bands such as Slayer, Ghost, Godsmack, Evanescence, Slash, Anthrax, Steel Panther, In This Moment, Killswitch Engage, Clutch, Gamma Ray, Beartooth, Hatebreed, Skillet, Atreyu, Quiet Riot, Watain, Cataclysm, Despised Icon, and the whole Summer Slaughter lineup is going to be on there as well. So you got Cattle Decapitation, you got Rivers of Nile, you got The Faceless, you got Carnifex, you got Lorna Shore, you got Brand of Sacrifice. I'm so excited to be here. I'm super honored. I am so excited about this. Today on the podcast is the last episode that I conducted on the Hell Over North America tour. This time around, it's my brother, Jim Gregory, the guitarist of Solium Fatalis. Check it out.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
What's up, everybody? Today we are in Rouyn-Noranda at Le Trèfle Noir, and I'm sitting down with my now good friend, Jim Gregory, the amazing guitarist, underrated amazing guitarist of Solium Fatalis, and on this run, he's been helping us out, slinging some cotton, selling some merch. Tell everyone a little about yourself.
I grew up in Iowa, and I've been playing guitar since I was, I guess, 10 years old, which would have been like 1989. And I wasn't any good at it, though. And then when I was in my first year at college, I decided that I didn't really want to live in Iowa anymore, so I joined the Air Force in 1998. And somewhere around 2012, I started Solium Fatalis towards the end of my military career. And we put our first album out in 2013. And then our second one out in 2015. Third one out in 2016. And then the fourth one came out in 2018. Which is also coincides with the year I retired from 20 years in the U.S. Air Force. So.
Yes, congratulations for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. He's been busting my chops this whole tour saying that.
Let me understand, was Solium your first band?
No, I was in several projects and things that just never got off the ground because I had spent anywhere from 100 to 300 days a year on the road, traveling, deploying, and things like that. So I would try to be in bands, but it was poor timing and just an inability to really kind of get my bearings in a band. And then when I moved up to New Hampshire, I finally was able to do so because my work rate lightened up and I was able to meet musicians that wanted to do music with me and stuff like that. So,
what was the initial inspiration for you to pick up a guitar?
Well, I have a friend named Doug Gehring who was a huge Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and AC/DC fan, and he played guitar, and he said, "You should play guitar," and I said, "Okay." And so I played his guitar, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know how to hold it. And then I got lessons from this guy. I can't even remember his name. My mom found him.
He's like,
Said,
stop holding it like a violin.
I was holding it flat in my lap like a steel.
Like
lap steel.
Like
slide guitar.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing. There was no internet, and we didn't have MTV or anything. I couldn't watch somebody play, so I just had to guess from pictures that I saw in magazines. And at any rate, so we were tooling around with guitars and things like that, and I just discovered like 89 was about the time I found like Metallica, and Justice for All was still a relatively new album, so I'm dating myself. And then I discovered death metal within the next 2 years, which was when there was that great big boom of death metal bands like Morbid Angel and
the Florida takeover.
Scene.
Yeah.
And right around that time was when like Napalm Death and all the Swedish stuff came out, like Dismember and Entombed. So it all kind of happened all at once, and all coinciding with when we actually got MTV, and I finally saw this show called Headbangers Ball around 1990, 91. And they used to play all these really heavy, death metal stuff like late in the show. And so I found a more eclectic blend of metal like XL and Mordred and a bunch of Bay Area thrash bands that kind of never really got big, unlike Testament or Slayer and stuff. So I had a weird mix of bands that I grew up listening to along with death metal that inspired me to want to play guitar like that. But it wasn't until I was about 20 that I really started to wrap my head around what I was doing on a guitar, and even longer for me to get to where I was just competent at it and I could actually just play, and hold time and things like that. So slow learner.
No, either that or you're picky.
Yeah.
Or you have ideas in your mind that you can't replicate, and that frustrated you.
Yes, very much so. Like it was a big problem at the time because the stuff in my head wasn't what was coming out of my hands. So I refused to get in front of an audience and try and play it. Even in the early band days when I was in my early to mid 20s and stuff, it just wasn't good enough to put in front of somebody. It just wasn't. It didn't sound as good as my favorite bands or any really good bands at all, for that matter. So.
At what point did you feel competent and comfortable enough to step out and get out into the stage?
About the time I was 30, and I really started to kind of focus in on doing Solium.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can do this. I'm ready.
When you were deployed, did you ever bring a guitar with you? Or
yeah, every time.
Really?
Every single time.
Oh, that's awesome.
I totally destroyed a guitar doing that. I had taken it to England where it was about, I don't know what it would be in Celsius, but about 15 degrees, so freezing. And then I took it into the desert where it was about 90 degrees, and then I took it back.
Just
after the
warped out of shape.
It bent it completely out of shape, and it was so damaged that we couldn't repair it. So then I started taking really cheap guitars with me over, just in case.
That's smart.
Yeah.
We're at Trèfle Noir. It's a popular place, as you guys can all hear in the background, but the beer is good. Let's see what they got for us today. I wanted to drink their Ghostbuster, which is a Imperial Ghost with coriander, and it's an Imperial Ghost, 6.6%. It has kaffir lime leaves in it normally, but their tap is dry. So the guy suggested this one. It's a new one. It's not canned yet. It's called Quéveillon. It is a sour pale ale. Let's see what it's got. Cheers.
Cheers, man.
It smells sour.
No, I love this one. Reminds me of...
oh, boy, it is good. It's not too bitter. Like a lot of these sour IPAs tend to be too bitter. This is good. This is drinkable. Clocks in at 6.5%. It's very good.
It's very similar to the True Brewing beer we had in Denver.
Are you a craft beer enthusiast?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. When did you start discovering craft beer? What would be some breweries?
So the first time I discovered craft beer, I was living in Florida, and I was stationed in Tampa at MacDill Air Force Base, and they had just opened a craft beer store near my friend Rob's house. And so we used to go over there and we'd find these new brands. They're now household names, but at the time, Dogfish Head wasn't a household name. It was still a very relatively new brewery, and this is probably at least 15 years ago. And so when I started discovering, that was my first IPA, was a Dogfish Head 90-minute IPA.
Really?
Yes,
Which is
it
still
was.
a very solid beer.
Right. And of course, they've kind of surpassed that even themselves, and there's been so many great breweries that popped up, but that's where I started. And then I discovered like Sea Hag IPA and these other ones that came from New England and just all over the place. So I would try anything. I found my first barley wine doing that. And then, of course, amazing stouts from like Uintas, like the Labyrinth that I think you and I have had. And once I got up to New England, I realized that New England is one of, and there's several meccas in the United States for beer, but New England is definitely one of the big meccas for beer between Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And you could probably add some other states too, but those in particular I've had a ton of beer from, and I've really never had an IPA that beat anything out of the New England area or an American Pale Ale or those types of beers.
They inspired like a whole new wave of IPAs. Like I don't like West Coast IPAs anymore. I only want to drink New England hazy IPAs.
Right.
It's just
There's something really smooth and very easy about those beers.
It's like still hoppy, but not bitter hoppy.
Right.
Which is something I enjoy very much.
Yeah, and it definitely differentiates between when I first started drinking IPAs from like Dogfish Head, the 60/90, and the 120, which are really potent and they're pretty good. But compared to like some of the ones in my area, like Great Rhythm or From the Barrel, and I'm sure I'm going to forget a whole bunch of guys, but Stoneface Brewing in New Hampshire is one of the best in that area, and they constantly surprise me with like their double dry hopped ales, and they have a certain flavor to them that are very unique to that area, so it's been really cool.
Do you remember your first beer?
Yes, I do. Actually, I was a kid, and my parents had this party, and they had gotten a ton of Busch Light, and I think I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And I was like, well, what's this? And I cracked open a can of this beer. I drank a sip of it, and I wanted to vomit. And I just dumped it out, and I didn't touch any beer after that until I was like in my teens. And then in my teens, you would just get whatever alcohol you could get your hands on because it wasn't exactly legal for us to be drinking.
Especially in Iowa.
Yeah, the legal
like
drinking
even more
age in the
strict.
States is 21.
Yeah.
So when you're 16, all you want to do is get beer and hook up with the ladies. Or dudes, depending on your persuasion. And so it was, I was only successful at one of those things as a teenager, and that was getting my hands on beer. But it was pretty low quality stuff. Natty Ice and that kind of swill.
Natural ice.
That stuff put me off from beer drinking for several years because I thought, well, if that's what beer is, I guess I'm a whiskey man. I'm not going to touch this stuff.
That's too funny.
Yeah.
It's too funny. You always mention that you moved to Florida. You're a big death metal fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
You moved to Florida, or you get deployed to Florida.
Stationed there, yeah.
Stationed in Florida.
Yeah. I lived there.
And it was the dead time for death metal from Florida.
Oh, it was so bad.
So you must have been excited, and then you get there.
It was so every album, like Iced Earth, Death, Deicide, I mean, name the album, it said Morrisound on it. I think Cynic did theirs with him, or they did it with Scott Burns, someone else in Florida. And so I just thought there would be this huge neighborhood of just nothing but death metal bands, and they'd all know each other. I had this weird idea of what it was going to be like when I got there. And when I got there, they had all either broken up, were on some kind of hiatus, and the clubs there that were playing all the bands that would have them around weren't having them around anymore. So it was gone. It was 1999, I believe, early 99, February. And I was just floored by the fact that I couldn't find these bands. And then I drove to Morrisound to see what I thought it was going to be some building. It's this tiny facility.
It's like in a factory area, I've heard.
Yeah, it's actually in a more rougher area of town. But I was too scared to walk in there and say hello or anything like that. And I had this really romanticized version of what the Florida death metal scene was. And then the reality of it was completely different. So when I tried to do a metal band there wasn't that many people interested because the kind of music that was coming up through the ranks at that time was new metal.
Korn, Limp Bizkit, Deftones.
Yeah, and Slipknot had just broken big.
We have spoken about that. We both went to that same tour.
Yes,
You
yes.
in Florida, me in Montreal.
Yes.
It was Machine Head, Cold Chamber.
Slipknot and Amen.
Amen. I don't think Amen made it into
You
Montreal.
didn't make it in Canada?
I don't think so.
So they were terrible. No offense, guys. That night they were. We'll say that. They might have been great. I don't know.
PC Gregory.
Right. But So Machine Head was direct support, and then Cold Chamber was a headliner, and I'm not going to lie, I absolutely hated nu metal. I don't really care for it to this day. It has its qualities. And
Why did you go to the show, though?
Because I liked Machine Head, who had put out Burn My Eyes and The More Things Change. And at that point, they were touring for the Burning Red, which I wasn't a huge fan of.
Which is their nu metal album.
Right, with the rapping and stuff.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, it's not a bad album. It just, at the time, for me, wasn't something I wanted to hear from a band that was really heavy and dynamic and still playing metal in America, which was a trick. So this new band comes out called Slipknot, and I'd never heard them, and people said, you're going to love this band. And I'm like, I don't know. And then it's 9 guys, or they come out, and 3 or 4 of those guys are 6'5", 6'6", so they're gigantic anyway. And then they get up on stage, and the entire maybe 1,500 people at the Ritz, aka the Masquerade, now back to the Ritz, went into a human tornado. And I thought I was going to die. I really was like, I'm dead. I was stuck in the middle of that, and it was a controlled riot. And it was one of the most awe-inspiring things I've ever seen. I've never seen a band pop a crowd like that, but a handful of times in my life. Like Lamb of God, when I watched them, they popped the crowd like you would not believe it. And it was really like, I knew I was watching something special when I saw them. And then, with all due respect to Machine Head, when they came out, the air was out of the room. Like, there just was no energy left.
And then Cold Chamber had nothing.
Cold Chamber had 0, and the crowd just left. Like, 2 songs in, they just left. Yeah, because Machine Head did a great performance that night, too, but very different, much more tame compared to Slipknot, who just
mature,
erupted.
maybe, almost.
Absolute, very professional, very slick, and Rob was, very nice to the crowd, thanks for being here kind of guy, whereas Slipknot was like, we hate you, fuck you maggots. And I'm like, these guys are going to kill us. It was surreal.
My memories of that show in Montreal was one of the second concert I went to, and we had just gotten the CD the week before, like my group of friends in high school. I think I'm in grade 11 or something.
Right.
And we just get the CD, and the only image that we've seen of the band is the CD. There's no internet back then.
Yeah, which is some really jaded images on that
it's
album.
All like
it's kind of
blurry
janky
and weird.
Yeah.
So when they all stepped out on stage, I was afraid.
Yeah.
I was like,
we all were.
What is this?
Yeah, but you could not watch it.
Yeah.
It was like, what am I seeing here?
Great show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's transition to this tour. We're on the Hell Over North America, the Ultimate Blast Beat Party with Aborted, Benighted, Cryptopsy, and Hideous Divinity. How do you feel about this tour? You've done lots of tours in your life.
Well, not like this,
but not like this. So let's start with how did you like this tour?
I love this tour. It's been one of the greatest experiences of my musical career as well as my personal life. Just because we've all gotten closer as friends, which is always my favorite thing. The music is really secondary to not to sound corny, but like the music's sort of secondary to the brotherhood you build with the fans and with the bands, and just getting out there and meeting people and selling merch. I meet thousands of fans, and they've all been really cool, which is really nice. Like, I wasn't sure what to expect. I didn't know if somebody tried to rob me. I didn't,
you were so prepped the first day.
I was.
You're like, if someone tries to rob me, I'm gonna kill them. And I was like, Jim, it really doesn't matter. It's just a T-shirt.
Yeah, I was at level red.
And then that first night in Detroit
was scary.
Was where they actually tried to rob you.
The first day I went on tour was 2 people tried to steal some stuff, and I looked at it was a 2-party crew. A lady to my left trying to distract me, and a guy to my right with his hand on the table trying to swipe the tip jar and trying to CDs and whatever he was trying to get. And she was trying to distract me, but I obviously was aware, and I was already at a heightened alert sense anyways, just because I was nervous. And I just looked at the guy, and I said, "Are you sure?" And he looked at me, and he thought about it, and he walked.
For people that don't know what Jim looks like, he's a big boy. He's 6'4".
Yeah, 6'3".
6'3", and
about 275 pounds.
He's got some meat on him. Yeah,
got some guns, dude.
What would be the major difference between your previous tours and this tour?
Well, this tour is way more high level than the ones I've done with my band. My band are just get in the van and go and do what we can to make it and see what we can do. Whereas this is there's so many fans of these bands, like, and it is such an amazing tour package with the buses, the sound guys, the merch, the lighting guys, and just this entire thing is just such a big presentation for extreme metal. And if there was any doubt in my mind at all if extreme metal was having issues, otherwise it's been wiped away. They're very much fans of this everywhere.
Even in Memphis, Tennessee.
But we drew a crowd there.
Yeah,
They were into
shout
it.
out to the Memphis people.
Yeah.
We're just teasing you.
In the rain. They showed up in
They
the
did. That's
rainstorm.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
That's
so
true.
that was, that just shows you
They
how cool that is.
braving the gunshots next door.
Yeah. And there was, lightning storm, everything, and they showed up. It was like, wow,
We were sitting in our bandwagon, and we hear pop, 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 pop.
Oh, yeah,
pop.
gunshots, yeah.
And we were like, was that gunshots? I'm so Canadian. I live like in this little easy place. There's minimal violence. I've never heard a gunshot in Montreal.
Right. And it sounds like fireworks, kind of.
So we text our TM, Alexander Kendrick, shout out.
He fibbed us.
And I said, was that gunshots? And he said, oh, no, the promoter says it's fireworks.
Now, that was a 38.
You knew it right away, yeah.
Well, with my military experience and all my friends who are gun enthusiasts, I know a 38 snub when I hear it.
We go to this store right next to where we were parked, and the clerk is watching on the video these guys stealing beer from him, and then he comes, you see him on the video run out and shoot at them.
Yes.
And he's like, I hope they're dead in their car bleeding. They'll
Yeah.
never come back here and steal here again. And I was like, oh my God.
For beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have just given them beer. I
just
wouldn't have
stayed-
shot them. It's not worth it.
I just stayed in the bandwagon the rest of the night.
Yeah, I think I hung out there and hoped for the best.
Jesus.
Yeah.
If you could pick a tour for Solium Fatalis, who would be on that lineup?
Oh, boy. That's a tough question. Because I'm a fan of so many bands. And, obviously Cryptopsy, because and a lot of people probably don't know this, but Flo and Ollie play on our second album. And Chris, the guitar player for Cryptopsy, engineered it, along with our last three, actually. And if it wasn't for Cryptopsy being generous with me and lending me their talents and abilities and giving me an audience, I would never be in a band. So my first choice is Cryptopsy. And after that, I could just shoot for the moon and say I'd love to go out with Cannibal Corpse just because they're so heavy and I love that band. Hate Eternal would be up there. I have a ton of respect for Eric Rutan. One of the greatest compliments, I got to throw this out there to John Longstreth. When we were in New York, John Longstreth, who's played with us live with Solium, with his band, paid me probably one of the nicest compliments he could have when he said, "You're the only player I've ever seen that looks and plays like Rutan." And I thought that was so cool that he compared me to
That
Eric.
is an excellent compliment.
Yeah, and I said, yeah. I said, I don't know what to say, man. It was because they really talked to our lead player, Ryan, who's a flashier, shred kind of guitar player. So when somebody compliments me on my rhythms, it's pretty humbling, honestly,
What is in the future?
Well, for us, hopefully, I'd love to get onto a record label that would give us the time of day, and I'd love to go out on a real tour with some bands like we've mentioned, or even, just some people that we could get a little bit more of a step up in the musical world. Even if it's a small step, I'll take it. Very honestly, it's been kind of tough, a little bit difficult for us to kind of get a foothold in music, and it's just because there's so many bands. And I think, honestly, fans like a tried and true product. I think they know they can buy a Cryptopsy album or a Boarded album, and they know they're going to get something that's really high quality. So if they go see us, they might be thinking, I'm taking a risk. So we actually get compliments at our shows from some fans who are like, you guys are really good.
You're actually a good band. Yeah.
We've had them say, you're actually good.
Which lies into the amazing videos that you've been posting
Of the locals.
of the local bands.
There are some people, I believe in introspective nature. I believe that you should be able to look within yourself, be honest with yourself, And just like I was before I was 30 years old, I could not get on a stage and play for you. It would be embarrassing, and I refuse to embarrass myself. There has to be some mechanism in some of these guys' heads that says, I'm not good at this. I need to practice. I need to learn my craft. I need to be disciplined and professional. Unfortunately, I think some guys just want to do drugs, party, and screw shit up. And they get up on stage, and it's, to be honest with you, it's sad because they're paying people there that want to see a good band. Nobody ever goes to a show and says, boy, I hope this sucks, and the bands are really terrible. I don't think I've ever said that. Just the same as I've never gone to a movie and said, I hope this is terrible.
Yeah,
So,
I hope
yeah.
I fall asleep.
Yeah, I hope this is so bad I can laugh at it for a week. No one says that, you know.
Have you seen a good local band open up yet?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if you would count Vengeful as local. They're pretty big, but they're excellent. There was another band in Baltimore that did like a doom sludge thing. They were quite good. The house sound guys didn't always do these guys a favor, but you could tell there was talent there, and they were good songwriters.
That is a good pro tip. When you go out on the road, you pay to get your own sound guy.
Yes, absolutely.
It changes everything.
Absolutely. It's imperative because they know how you sound. They know your songs. They know what you're supposed to be doing. And you have a dialogue with them nightly. And Alex was amazing. Alexander Kendrick was amazing for Cryptopsy and for Hideous and Benighted. They sounded great every night. So it was a real pleasure to watch that.
I think out of all the fans that were disappointed that Benighted were gone because they can only do 2 weeks of this 4-week tour, I think you were the most disappointed.
I was actually, it's kind of painful to admit, but I love all those guys. They're all the coolest guys, and I was legitimately sad. I told Julien that I could not talk about it too much with him because I was going to get upset.
You were going to cry?
I was going to cry because no matter what kind of day I was having, I knew I could go up to Fac or Manu or Julien, and I could just say hello, and they would always be in a good mood, and I'd always get a hug from Julien. I know I'm saying his name wrong, but
No, that's right, Julien.
Yeah, Julien. So, but he was always like, Jim, give me a hug. And I was like, I love this guy. It's like the best guy.
He's the best.
And they were a show stealer, honestly. They were a real show stealing band. They were awesome. They were a great buffer between Cryptopsy and them. You know, it was just a great mix with them in there. So
I love them.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's up, fellas?
You mentioned that there's some... not complications, obstacles, getting Solium Fatalis to the next level. Aside from there being too many bands out there, what would be another obstacle?
Another obstacle is just getting noticed. It's getting noticed and being out on a tour that means something, because we've gone out on our own, but unfortunately we don't draw enough on our own or have enough press to really pull those fans in. We've been very fortunate a few times. We did 170 in St. Vitus in New York, which was awesome because we were with Soul Remnants, and then Soul Remnants was signed to E1. But I don't think E1 really helped them out a whole lot either. So that, and I'd just love to be on a record label that believes in us, and I'll show them, you know, because I can write an album, no problem, and make something good, and I'll just show them. Which has been what I've done since the beginning is, you know, if somebody liked Undying Season, I'm like, well, wait till you hear Neuronic Saw. And it was like, I can do better than that. And Ryan and I sat down and we wrote Genetically Engineered. And I constantly am trying to improve and make this band a next level band like where you guys are at, which is, you know, and this tour has been such a benefit for me because I'm able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, where I can see where we need to be and where we're at. And we're not too far off. We're very close.
Playing-wise, you guys are fine.
Oh, thanks.
Songwriting, you're fine.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of getting into the right hands, the right ears.
Yes, getting that
in the right circles.
Yeah, those pieces of the puzzle kind of in place. And, of course, the band name's not exactly the easiest to remember.
Solium
Fatalis.
No, I got that part I got down. Let's talk about that song that I did.
Oh, yeah, A Gathering of Storms.
A wonderful track with a female vocalist named
Heidi Irizarry,
who is from your area.
She's from Boston, yep.
Okay.
She grew up in Chicago, but she lives in Boston.
Okay. I love that track. It's different. How do you feel about it?
Well, for me personally, like, because we don't have a wide audience to really appease, and I don't have expectations, one of the cool things about being an independent band is I can kind of just do whatever I want. Getting the other band members on board sometimes can be a little bit of a pull, you know, a little bit tricky, because for Jeff, our vocalist, it's really just making him visualize the song, because he grew up on Hypocrisy and At the Gates and Dark Tranquility, and he likes that Melodeath stuff, and which is great, you know, it's fine. It's not my favorite, but either way, who cares? But so getting him to help visualize that was a real trick. So the first record, we did a slow song called The Seventh Gate, which is the only song off that album we'd still play live. And because I wrote that first record in 2 weeks, and I just wasn't really happy with how it turned out. So when we did the second record with Flo and Ollie, I did a song called An Asylum for Penitence, which is another really slow track that people were like, oh, this is different. When we did the third album, I really didn't do any songs like that. So when we got to Genetic, I really wanted to revisit a more dynamic, simple, slow approach to a song, which sounded more like a soundtrack than to a film than it ever would a death metal song. And I remember we did this, and I play the clean opening, and it's just nothing. There's nothing to it. It's like 4 notes, a little bit of an octave, and then Heidi creeps in with her voice, and then you kicked on, and everybody just plays this song, and I don't think we go past 70 BPM. It's very slow. And I wanted to have our vocalist, which was you, Heidi, and our vocalist, Jeff, paint a picture rather than me paint a picture with a bunch of riffs and a bunch of shredding, because that's already been done by so many bands that are so much better at it than we are, or at least me anyway, that I wanted to write a soundtrack that I know no other band could do. Only I could do it this way, because I had this image, and it was tough to get Heidi and everybody to really see what I was going for until they finally heard the mix, because it pieced together. But Chris and I had been working together for 3 albums at this point, so he definitely knew what I was going for. He definitely knew I had assembled a sort of linear song that was going to paint different shades and really just sound visual and vocal, and rather than just being
riff.
So if you listen to the track, you have to be patient. And the thing is it's right in the middle of a death metal album. And so I've seen reviews where people said it was a huge mistake. I humbly disagree. And I've seen more reviews that say it's the best song on the album. And for me, it's the best song I've ever written. It was the first time in 4 albums that I visualized a song, and it came out exactly how I had imagined, and even better than how I had originally envisioned it. So that was a huge step for us, and I definitely plan on making more tracks like it.
I personally really like the song. It's very catchy. The female vocals are spot on, amazing, Julie Christmas-esque. I really, really like it a lot. Do you think you will ever come out on the road with us again as a merch person?
Oh, yeah, why not?
Yeah?
Yeah, it's fun. And
I've enjoyed having you. You're a breath of fresh air. You're always positive. You've toured a lot. You've been deployed a lot. You've been away from home a lot with a bunch of dudes, with people dealing with issues, which happens on the road on tour as well. And I feel that you really helped round out and save this whole tour.
Oh, thank you.
I thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you. Do you have anything else you want to add, Vox and Hops?
I just want to say thanks for having me on here. It's a real honor to be amongst the luminaries of Vox and Hops. You've had some fantastic
The Vox
guests.
and Hops alumni. Yes.
Absolutely, man. It's a great show.
Thank you, Jim.
All
Cheers.
right. Thank you. Cheers, man.
Thank you so much for listening right to the end, Vox and Hops heads. Such a pleasure to have Jim out on the road with us. He is, as I mentioned in the interview, a breath of fresh air. Always a big smile on his face. He's seen a lot in his life, and he's dealt with a lot of shit. And he knows how to be a pleasant dude in a touring atmosphere. So a huge cheers and a huge thanks to you, Jim. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be at Heavy Montreal this year. I'm going to be conducting a bunch of interviews. I got a bunch that are lining up. Hopefully they all pan out, and I'm excited to share them all with you. Check it all out. It's going to be on Vox and Hops coming up in the next few weeks. I hope you have a great week. I hope you have a great weekend. Hang out with your friends, your families, and most importantly, enjoy life, metal, and craft beers. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.